Excellent. Just started recording.
Yeah.
So today we're sitting with Ani. Ani,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Cannot complain. So Ani, you and I have known each other for, I suppose, 10 years. We first met each other.
Yeah.
We met each other when you were visiting, developing exports into China with Wing Mao at the time.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, how did you originally get into the fruit industry? Because I know when we met 10 years ago, you had already been in the industry for quite a while.
Yes, that's right. See, I have been always enjoying working on technical side of the business, and that is how I got into grapes. Somewhere around 1992, 93, that was my first rendezvous with grapes as an industry, export industry. But that was very small project that time. But I got involved into it, and then there was a break of about 5 to 7 years when I went into some other industry, agribusiness, of course. But uh, I was drawn into it when I joined around 1999 or 2000. I joined Grape Growers Association in one of the states in Maharashtra. It has got strongest Grape Growers Association. Now it stands around 32,000 members. So I had a very short stint working with the association, and that was a great experience because I got to learn a lot many things from growers, a lot many things from the scientists who were working in National Research Center for Grapes at that time in Pune. And my uh, my job profile there was uh, getting across the scientist sort of lab to land project. So I was to convey the research findings to the growers and connect growers with National Research Center for Grapes. And after a short stint there, I got an opportunity in Mahindra, which is one of the top 10 companies in India, and they wanted to start the grape business. So that is how I was drawn into grapes sphere. And as I told in the beginning, I always enjoyed working on the technical side, connecting with the growers, establishing relationships. So that is how I was able to establish and start off the business in Mahindra
Yes,
because I knew the growers very well that time.
that's wonderful. And when was it that you exactly started with Mahindra, since you originally started in the industry in the early 90s?
I switched over to Mahindra, I think around 2002, 2003.
2002, 2003. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was probably 10 years later that we met. We met probably
Yes, correct.
2013, 2014.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, and in general, obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of growth in the Indian grape industry in the recent 5 to 10 years. But if you're looking at how it first started, was the industry being built up focused on exports, or was the industry being built up simply to supply local domestic demand? How did it originally start developing and growing?
It started as local grapes. Export was not at all focused when it started because I remember days when we were eating seeded grapes, 30, 40 years back I'm talking about. And slowly then Thompson seedless started getting cultivated, and then around 90s, people thought that they can also export, and they slowly started the export initially to UK and then to other destinations as well. But all along this time, at that time and even today, domestic market of India is extremely strong. There's a lot of demand. Almost 90 to 95% of the production gets consumed here in India itself. But of course, if export drives the quality of the production, it incentivizes people to invest in the farms, especially the growers. So in a way, although the volume is small compared to the domestic volume, it gives a lot of impetus, to the cultivation and incentivizes the growers.
Yes. And I mean, just quite interesting. You mentioned that the majority, the large, you say perhaps over 90% of the domestically grown grapes aren't actually for export markets going
Yeah.
for domestic consumption. I'm going to guess that of that 90% of the volume, the varieties are not the normal varieties that we see in the export markets, or is it actually quite similar?
No, that was the case a few years back, when most of the domestic market was consuming a part of it. Southern part was consuming more of Sonaka, which is elongated white seedless grapes, locally developed. Then there's a black seedless variety called Sharad seedless, and then subtypes of Thompson seedless. So largely, these three were the varietal groups which were getting cultivated in India. But slowly, as there was a demand coming from Southeast Asia also, this Sonaka variety and its subtypes kept on increasing. There was a demand, and there's a lot of cultivation also, because domestic market kept on demanding more and more of this fruit. So now we see that some of the importers are getting other varieties from India as well, local variety. That is mainly Sonaka, which was earlier only focused in Thompson. But even now, European importers, they take only Thompson seedless. They are not taking Sonaka, the elongated white seedless. Very small amounts. Some people are taking.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that when I'm looking at the retail shelves in Germany, it's primarily Thompson seedless which is coming in.
Yes.
I believe I have seen a couple of other varieties, but it's really focused along that. Um, and if we're looking at India in terms of the export market, as things stand, the main export markets are the UK, Europe, and Russia.
Yes.
I view the UK and Europe as quite a traditional and very similar to each other, those two markets.
Yes.
If you're comparing the trade into the UK and Europe versus Russia, do you see similarities, or because of sanctions, is it very problematic for many growers exporting into Russia, or how does that all come together?
Uh, Yeah, there's a major difference between these. Of course, the quality specifications are different, MRL specifications are different, but those are manageable. But things which are beyond our control are those sanctions, or even getting the right due diligence, selecting the right buyer, getting the money back. These are the problems which normally Indian exporters face. And that is why there are very few exporters in India who have been successful in Russia. So yes, Russia takes a lot of volume. They take a lot of early grapes from India. Quality is not as great as we grow in the main season, and there are less entry barriers, I would say. But however, the important part for the exporter is getting the right partner in Russia. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult for them to uh, get the money and get the information in a transparent manner.
Yes. Yeah, I can only imagine. I think uh, when one also looks at other commodities, so let's say citrus from South Africa into Russia, or even apples, uh, you only have a few companies that are really doing the business into Russia, because I think for the smaller growers and exporters, the risk is just a little bit too much for them. Uh,
Yes, yeah,
to deal into the country, even if the returns may be there.
yeah,
The risk is just maybe a little bit too much to stomach.
that's right. Actually, Russia has been a long-standing partner with India
Yes,
in trade and all other geopolitical matters, but that really doesn't help us, in resolving these issues. Those issues still remain like that.
yes. Interesting. Um, so going more towards this current season, and then I think you can also mention what it is that you're doing at the moment. We spoke briefly before, and you've since created your own consultancy firm
Yeah.
focused in India, focused on the grape industry, and with a particular uh, uh, focal point of the export markets.
Yeah.
Um, so this season has been different. My understanding is, as you mentioned, the exports have perhaps been 40 to 50% lower than previous years.
Yeah.
How's all this came together?
See, I'll just give you a little background. What happened in last 4 or 5 years since how I got into consulting business. I was actually working with Mahindra, and that is a quite system-oriented company, a very large organization. Around 150,000 people used to work there when I was last working there. So everything runs in quite a systematic way. A lot of compliances are required, and while we do all this implementation, we learn and pick up a lot of things, which are non-existent in other exporting companies. And in last couple of years or last 3 4 years, there are a lot of startups coming into India, not only in agribusiness but almost every walk of life. We have got startups, and many of them are running successfully. So for startups to come into agribusiness, grape was a natural product, because it gives you a lot of sales turnover. One container is around 25 30,000 euros, so you can quickly build up your sales revenue. If you implement right strategies and find right partners, it is easy to establish your brand. So startups started to explore the possibility of investing in this business and going forward. So I worked for a startup called Dehat, and then I worked for another startup called VGrow. But while I worked there, what I noticed is the main focus of these startups was building their business, or that was their priority: building the revenue, building the business, and the priority of uh, implementing quality standards, training the manpower, developing the manpower, implementing various systems which actually help you in scaling up a business and
Yes.
running it successfully over decades, not 1 or 2 years, over decades. These things, the focus was lacking. So I thought that probably this is thing which needs people. That is the gap in the industry. Then I resigned and started my own consulting. So I focus on quality improvement in pack house, in farms, system implementation, certification, all such kind of things where this kind of manpower is not available in India. And there is a reason to that also, because there are no big organizations or corporates into this business in India. They're all proprietary trader businesses, where major decisions or the decision making processes are handled by the owner themselves. So the
Yes.
employees are not, part of decision making process, and so they don't get trained in decision making. They are just told what to do, but not how to do, or how do they arrive at a decision. And there, I think my role in Mahindra helped me a lot, in understanding this. And now, when the new companies are coming up, I'm able to advise them on, all these processes, decision-making processes, enabling them, helping them to build their manpower and capabilities. So that is how I think I'm doing this business now. I'm working with two companies. One is UK-based company; they are importing from India, and another is Indian company which is exporting from India. Uh, Coming back to this year specifically,
Yes.
this, this year we were facing problems since the foundation pruning, which is done in the month of April, March or April. So there were rains happening throughout the period, right from the month of April. Actually, monsoon starts in June in India, but we were getting rains in April, May, June. So all the critical stages we got rains, unfortunately, and it was not in small pockets. It was widespread. So almost all grape growing region, especially Nasik region, which is the northern side of Mumbai, that got suffered very badly, and the production loss in production was huge. Some of the farms which I had seen has got zero production, literally zero, and the small farmers, having area holding around 1 hectare, 2 hectares, they are suffering very badly. Not so much with the large growers, because if you got, three, four, five plots within a farm, maybe one or two will go, but couple of them might survive. So that is the situation right now, and that is what is driving the procurement prices. Average procurement prices over the season, if you take all the qualities for last 2 3 years, was around 60 to 65 Indian rupees,
Yeah.
which is right now around 120, 130 rupees average, even more than that, because Europe is costing 1.5 euros per kilo, 150 rupees. So average would be around 130, 140 rupees, which is extremely high right now. And we don't expect that it would go down during the season, because the peak season has already started. We start peak season around first week of February, which has started, but the prices are not going down, and we expect that by March end we will be over with Indian grapes, and very short season, at least 3 weeks short than the regular season. So this has got affected very badly. In fact, originally some exporters were thinking not to offer these high prices, but what to do? They need to honor the commitments. So ultimately, people started offering these prices, 130, 140, it's gradually going on 150. Now it's between 150 and 160 rupees.
Yes. And I mean, it's a marked increase in terms of the price
Yeah.
at production side.
Yes.
But in some sense, while there's been lots of losses, my understanding is the market in Europe is not too great at the moment for grapes. So yeah, I don't know, if the normal volumes were in the market, perhaps it would have been even a more difficult situation. I guess one would never know.
Yeah, it would have been. It had a couple of years back. We faced very serious issue, because of the shipping problems. Ships were arriving in a random way, and it was creating some kind of oversupply in the market, and Indian exporters suffered a lot. Compared to that, I think the situation would be better this time. Of course, we still don't know the tipping point, at what point probably consumer will stop buying grapes. I guess it would be around 15 euros or 16 euros. Beyond that, I don't think consumers are going to buy more and more grapes, especially Thompson series from India. So I guess the prices in Europe probably would remain in this kind of range between 12, 13, 14, 15, depending on the quality and the customer programs. But even if we are able to maintain anything beyond 14, I think we will survive the situation. That's
Yes,
the kind of reading I have right now.
understood. Just a little bit earlier when you were discussing how you structure your consulting firm and what you're mainly spending your time towards, you mentioned you've got quite a technical focus, which it's quite surprising for me, because every time I've ever known you and spoken with you, I've always been more focused on the commercial side, which you seem to be quite strong on. So I mean, with your current existing clients, are you mainly focusing on the technical aspects for them, or is it really a mix between your technical side as well as your commercial side?
It has been both because all along I have been involved in kind of techno-commercial role, because while I was connecting with the growers on agronomy, I was also negotiating the prices with them because I knew what's happening in the farm. So I was probably the best one to, judge the prices. I was knowing what's happening around their farms, not only their own farms. So I really enjoyed. In fact, I really enjoy this technical role always, but one cannot neglect commercial part of it uh, unless and until we do good negotiation, good business. We can't support the technical activities also. And especially in grapes, we cannot neglect this technical part. It's highly perishable crop, needs a lot of focus on technology, agronomy to grow the right quality. Especially in India, because India is a very difficult terrain to grow grapes.
Hmm.
India is not the area where grapes should be grown. I'm of that opinion. Just to give an example, Indian farmers would spray around 50 sprays during growth cycle, pesticides. Whereas their counterparts in Chile or South Africa or Egypt, they would spray maybe 5 or 10 sprays. But the commendable job which growers are doing here, that in spite of this, almost 50% of their production is compliant to stringent German MRL regime. So that's a very good job which they are doing along with Indian government and National Research Center for grapes.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I know, uh, in the past, the MRLs were quite a sore point where there would be issues, but I haven't
Yeah,
really heard those issues in recent years. So I
yeah,
suppose it's been a huge shift in terms of the usage of different growing
yes, yes.
processes. And if you're looking at the grape industry, where do you see that there's possible growth? I know that, quite often, you supply into the existing markets, which take the majority of the volume. But people always discuss, these growing regions, and, India is a growing region for exporters from other countries. And for Indian grapes, is there more growth in the Middle East? Is there more growth in Southeast Asia? I know there's a lot of Indian grapes in both of those regions, and I'm wondering, from a grower perspective, do they see continued growth in some of these locations, or are they really just putting a small portion of their volume and swapping between the markets?
Uh, I don't think exports from India is going to grow much. It has been growing quite a lot in last few years, but I think that's not good for the industry because as the export grows, uh, I always hear from European importers that you people Indians are exporting too much. Well, that happens, but nobody sends containers here without a label on it. Someone asks to load and then the container gets loaded. But what I have figured out, it's probably what's happening because a lot of fruit, actually excess fruit, which cannot be consumed by growers or which cannot be sold on supermarket shelf on a reasonable price, ends up in promotions. So it gets sold off at a lower price. And since most of Indian fruit is sold at consignment price, so prices, whatever price the exporter gets is the final price. There's no point in negotiation or anything. So ultimately, growers and exporter uh, get hit out of this thing. But if the export is controlled by some way, not like the way we had this year, probably we'll have good time. Another thing is the new varieties which are coming up, which arrived very late in India. Because I remember when I went to Peru in 2014 or 15, that time uh, Mahindra tried to export few containers from there and we were successful as well. That time they were talking about new varieties, and in India we were nowhere at that time. But slowly we started. There are few companies now who have invested. Uh, of course, the Indian regulations are little bit tricky to overcome. Uh, so these breeding companies were little bit hesitant initially, but now they are overcome,
Yes.
and these varieties are coming up. I think if these varieties come up, probably it will give new lease of life to Indian exporters, because Thompson is not going to survive for long. Maybe it will be there in the market, but as I have seen in South Africa, almost 50% of the production has been replaced by new varieties. So I hope that happens here in India as well, but it will be slower than South Africa, because uh, the growers are very small. They cannot approach the breeders directly. Breeders have to work their way around through the exporters, and it adds a lot of layers in between. So this process is very slow getting the new varieties. Right now, I think my guess is area under cultivation in India under new varieties would be approximately 3,000 acres, and in next 2 3 years time we are expecting around 500 containers of these new varieties getting into market from India. But I would really like to see that number grow up. Just to survive the grape cultivation and grape export in India, we have to have around 2 3 thousand containers of these new varieties.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And I think, while there's one benefit about moving slightly slower because of the friction in getting the plants to India and distributed,
Yeah.
one can at least see, can Peru, can South Africa, can Chile, can Australia grow a good variety, a good new variety. And while I understand, the Indian climate's completely different,
Yeah.
it does give a sense of, okay, these varieties seem to work in these climates and they seem to work in these markets.
Yes.
So perhaps that's somewhat helpful for Indian growers and exporters to do their research before making the commitments to make large plantations.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, it will give an opportunity for Indian farmers to experiment, to learn from each other. One good thing which has happened this year is, I would say, it has passed the rain test, because the rain happened in so many growth stages, but all these varieties, they were not affected. You know, so this is one very important observation which all of us had, and that has rejuvenated the interest in these new varieties. Farmers know that these varieties are going to survive the rains. Now let's
Yes.
see what happens, with the market, what prices exporters are able to offer, how the color develops, how the taste develops. That is yet to see.
Yes. And Annie, I remember many years ago, I was speaking with, it was a UK based company, and the man had been importing Indian grapes for, I think, 20 odd years back then. And he was telling me that he believes there's some regions within India which haven't actually cultivated grapes, which he believes, sitting in the UK, but having let's say, a 30-year history in the Indian grape trade. He believes that some of these regions are actually optimal for grapes, and I believe they were actually near the southern parts of India.
Yeah.
Um, how has the production changed in India? Because I know, for example, in South Africa, you know, you've got the Hex River, but you also have the Orange River, and the
Yeah.
Orange River was really produced and developed later than the original Western Cape
Yeah.
growing regions. And the Orange River ends up being a very important location to grow grapes, to be in a good window, and also produce good quality.
Yeah.
In terms of India, how do you see the lay of the land, and is there untapped regions which have potential?
Such things have happened. Actually, grape cultivation has spread a little bit, mostly in and around Nasik and Sangli areas of Maharashtra. So you will find most of the grape cultivation in Maharashtra. But what your friend said was right. Actually, grape cultivation has gone into southern India area around. There's a hill station called Ooty. So foothills of Ooty, they grow a lot of red grapes. And these grapes, they are able to sell in domestic market in areas, cities like Bangalore and Hyderabad and all, and they get very good prices, more than 100 rupees. When local prices here in Nasik were around, say, uh, 45, 50 rupees max, these growers were able to get 100 rupees from domestic market. So why would they grow for export? So these growers, I have been there, seen and interacted with the growers also. So the growers were not interested in taking all those pains required to grow exportable grapes when they can easily get a good price over there. Another issue which we faced there is the infrastructure. There was no good, uh, which of course would have come later on, but at that time, and it is still not there, good pack houses, pre-cooling units, cold storages, connectivity with the port. All these things happen to be perfectly aligned here in Maharashtra, in Nasik and Sangli region. Another region which was about to develop was a small area in Ratlam in Madhya Pradesh, central India. But there also, apart from few hundred, it has not further developed. It also calls for a lot of trained labor, which is easily available in and around Nasik, because there's a big tribal belt in Nasik where these migrant labor come during the season time. They do everything and then they go back to their villages. So this lot of this labor force is easily available. There's no special training required. So that is the reason why this grape growing has not percolated beyond certain regions in India. Lack of labor, lack of infrastructure, lack of even risk-taking ability of the growers. Because if you grow grapes, you take risk for the grapes. If you grow bananas, that farmer won't be able to take the higher risk which are there in grapes. So we have one saying here in India where uh, farmers are taking loans from the banks at
Mhm.
much cheaper rates of interest. But even at that rates also, even only grapes can repay grapes. That is what growers say here in India. So if you take loan for grapes, only grape is able to pay back. If you cultivate any other thing, you won't be able to pay back. And that's the reason it remained concentrated in a particular region. It's not a small region though. It, Maharashtra is a very big country,
Yes, yes,
even
yes.
state. So it has almost 7 to 10 districts now cultivate grapes in Maharashtra.
Interesting. Yeah, I know that it's not a small region that's
Yeah.
cultivating the grapes.
Yeah.
And that is interesting that parts of southern India can produce such beautiful returns compared to the more dominant
Yeah.
production areas, just because of where it's located in the markets
Yeah.
and I guess the
Yes.
time. And I mean, you did mention that it's also the infrastructure. Obviously, there's more export infrastructure in the regions where they primarily exporting from,
Yes.
whereas in these, let's call these newer outskirt regions, they don't have the infrastructure to easily do it. And of course, a grower is going to say, look, I can get 100 rupee per kilogram, correct?
Yeah. Per
You get
kilogram.
100
Yes.
rupee per kilogram, guaranteed or almost guaranteed,
Yes.
compared to perhaps a bit more if I try and export it. But if I export it, I need to arrange the logistics, I need to arrange
Yes.
the cooling, the packaging, I need to find an importer, or I need to go through a middleman. And these are too many steps. I'd rather take my
Yes.
money as is, which is completely fair.
Yeah.
Um, in the past, and I believe it's probably still true, you did mention that obviously the larger exporters are in a little bit better position to export into more risky places like Russia, because they can allocate a smaller percentage of their goods, and they know that even if it goes south,
Yeah.
they know what they're managing. Uh, in terms of uh, growing grapes in some of these regions, it's very small pieces of land, all owned by multiple different families or growers.
Yeah.
I
Correct.
guess that would also add friction to growing, um, to creating a vibrant, very large scale production base.
Yeah, that
Because
is
it has to
true.
go, it's more
Most of
gradual
the
process.
we have small growers. Average holding in Nasik is about 2 hectares, which is very small. So uh, very difficult to get investment into that kind of small farms. Of course, it's easy for them also to manage this size, but then getting new technologies, investing in that farm becomes challenging. And people are investing. It's not that, but wherever there are big family farms, holdings such as 10 hectares, 20 hectares, 25 hectares, there people are investing into automatic equipments, fertilizer dosing, weather stations. So a lot of these things are coming up here in India and very well entrenched now, these technologies. But there's, as we said, there's a limit. Small growers cannot invest in such kind of infrastructure.
Mm, mm. No, very interesting. Yeah, I think, Annie, obviously because of your, well, not only because of your background, but because you've been fortunate enough to be within big companies growing up the grape industry from the beginning
Yeah.
to date, I think you've got a very clear view of the entire industry. And while I know that there's going to be growers in specific regions who are adamant, they
Yeah.
understand the market very well. I think one must always take a step back and realize that perhaps they understand the market very well in their own region. But when it comes to other regions competing and other countries entering markets,
Yeah.
it becomes different. So I think you've got a very nice overview of the entire grape landscape in India. Um, did you ever do any other fruits? I guess you probably understand other fruits which are being cultivated in India, but your focus is in grapes.
Yeah, of course, my focus is in grapes. I have done mangoes previously in India, and I had an opportunity to work in Egypt for about 6 years. From Egypt, I used to do citrus, strawberry, pomegranate, and of course grapes. So that was a great opportunity for me to learn and as well as connect with people from diverse, origin, diverse culture. uh, I connected very well with people in South Africa, Peru, Egypt. In spite of working there for last about 10 years ago, I'm still connected with those people. So I like to make friends from the industry, and that has helped me a lot. I think, see, in India, we have got a export season for grapes of only 10 weeks. So in global context, it's not a significant, in 52 weeks, you supply only 10 weeks. So it's not significant. You can say that you can go off without grapes for 10 weeks if you decide to do. So that is one hurdle where Indian companies will always, face for expansion, establishing new connections, etc.
Yes.
So it may be a good idea for Indian companies, which they still haven't done, is establish a base outside India and start supplying from there in order to increase their supply window, not only from India. So if you go to a importer and tell him that I'm going to supply you for say 20 weeks, not just 10 weeks or 30 weeks, I'll supply you from Egypt, I'll supply you from India, I'll supply you from maybe South Africa. All these are overlapping regions. So that would probably of interest to the importers, and growth avenue for Indian companies also, because for Indian exporters there is very little room left for expansion or doing new things. So and there's no scope for investment also in India, because you cannot invest in farm as per Indian laws. You can invest only in the pack house, and what's the use of pack house when you don't have grapes? So
Sorry,
uh,
I'm very. You mentioned you cannot invest into the farms. Is this as an international company or?
no, any Indian corporate cannot do farming as per Indian regulations. So they have to necessarily buy from the small growers. They cannot have their own land for cultivation.
Oh, that's very interesting. So,
Yeah.
okay, that's very interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Yes,
So
that's
they
to
the
protect the small growers. Government has made that rule
since when has that been implemented?
since long, very long.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so they're investing more in the pack houses and
Correct.
the cold rooms.
Correct. Yes.
That is yeah, that is quite interesting.
You can using some regulations. You can lease in a land, but of course that is only for 10 years, 15 years, and that's what people are doing now. But then you can't invest in a leased land.
No, that's a very short time frame as well.
Yes. Yes.
10, 15 years it would go by very
So,
quick.
so it might be a good idea for these exporters, to expand their base outside India, where they can establish very good relationship with the breeders, with the customers, and then extend that relationship into India or even Egypt. If they start from South Africa, maybe they continue in India and then later into Egypt, thereby supplying almost for 6 months in a year.
Very interesting. And I know, again, I know your main focus is on the grape industry, but I, I'm gonna, I would, I would guess that these rules don't really apply for banana plantations.
These rules are applied everywhere, even in grapes also, in banana also. But what happens, there's a family holding. If it is a family holding, then a grower can have large area, 50 hectares, maybe 100 hectares also sometimes. In some states like Punjab, in northern area, there these rules don't apply for the large growers. But of course, corporate growing rules are applied everywhere across India.
Interesting. No, that's
So even
fascinating.
in banana also, where India is exporting huge quantity of banana, mostly to Middle East, because the
Yes.
shelf life is very short. There also we have large farms and large companies exporting up to 3,000 containers in a year, but they still have to go and buy the fruit from the growers and middlemen.
Yes, understood, understood. Um, Understood. Interesting. I didn't know about the corporate holdings. It's good. It's very, very useful to know that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Annie, I had a great time just discussing in general all these different elements. I'm happy to know that you have your own consultancy firm now, and from what you've mentioned privately, it is slowly progressing in a positive
Yes.
way. So that's great news.
Yes.
And yeah, I do like that you're combining both the technical aspect as well as the commercial aspect, which is it's incredibly helpful. And I think, not only is it helpful for Indian companies because you've got a very good exposure in international markets,
Yeah.
it's also incredibly valuable for importers because, again, similarly, you've got a incredible exposure within India and all the different production basins. So I think it's a nice niche that you're carving out for yourself. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to mention or
No, I
comment.
really enjoy, I really enjoyed this unfiltered talk with you, and thank you for having me today. I really enjoyed. Every time I talk with you, I get to know something new, and inspiring. And I've seen your website and this YouTube channel also. I hope more and more people subscribe to this and we get connected into a big community.
I do too. I definitely agree with you there. Okay, Ani, it was great chatting.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Vincent. Thanks a